Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 189 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Today, we're going to be talking about that certificate that's, well, it's not really hanging on your wall. It's in your wallet, typically. But more specifically, the Sport Pilot Certificate and all things associated with it, and really the connotations as it applies to flying other airplanes. Today with me, as always, it's our friend and under the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180 named Lucy, and his name is Brian Siskin. Good evening.
Good evening. Glad to be here tonight. Glad our friend Wendell Geek is joining us tonight. And yeah, we're going to be talking the misperceptions of the sport pilot world and the privileges that go along with it. And luckily we have some pretty authoritative speakers here on that. But yeah, I'm just glad to be here, and the chat is booming.
Yeah. Feeling very fortunate tonight. Also joining me from the West Coast, it is our sport pilot extraordinaire, hence the subject. Hence the subject. The master of the subject is what I'll say. He flies a CTLS. We like to call it the Egg. He is everybody's friend. And I want to give him a quick shout out here real quick. Ted is, in my opinion, and I don't use this term flippantly, but Ted is a genius when it comes to tech. And he did something to our Creeper bot that I absolutely love. Now, for
define Creeper bot first.
I was about to do that.
Sounds bad. Is not.
It's not. It is voluntarily. You choose about. So we have this beautiful Discord channel, and if you so choose, you can request your plane be tracked on Radar Contact, is the actual name of the channel, and so everybody knows what you're up when your plane goes up, or they don't know who's flying it. But if it's a rental plane and you've got it in there, we know that plane's flying. But what he added to it was, it provides locational information about that airplane. And it gives links to FlightAware and Flight Radar, and all the different tracking websites.
So there are two levels of things that I added. The first was I added the nearest city of any size that you're near, which is great. We have no idea when somebody's up, and you have to click on the link to even remember where they live. The main thing that I added was, what's the nearest airport of any given size that you're flying near? And that was fun. It was, it's runway of 3,000 feet or longer, or it has an instrument approach, or it has a tower. And it would be kind of funny to figure out the Venn diagram of those. Like, does it have a tower and it's not a paved runway? But anyway, just kind of this quality filter of what shows up.
It's fun for me now to look at it. And I saw our friend Keith, who lives in the Arkansas area, and he's flying all through Utah. And it just add this whole new dimension to this, and it's a lot of fun. It's been a terrible distraction, and I love it. And so I want to say great job on that. I appreciate
Ted,
it.
what did you call it? The Creeper bot?
I called I created another one that tracks some local planes, and I called that the Creeper. And so I just brought that name over to this one. The first plane that was registered in that was Alyssa. So it was Alyssa and Josh and Ben were some of the first people that were in that. Oh. And really it came out of one of the early Nashville fly-ins.
Oh, yeah.
We knew people were flying in, and we didn't know who and when they get there and everything else. And so I started making a link that had everybody's tail numbers on it, so you could see when people arrived. And then I must have made 50 of those links trying to figure out the right one. And yeah, so it evolved into that, and we brought up Discord, and I dropped it on there. It's been really fun though.
Is this why Ben, you're so happy because now RYY. It's very clear if somebody's approaching that airport, and you can turn your ringer off.
There's a little bit of a defense mechanism in there. So it really is fun to watch our listeners where they actually are in the country and where they're going. It's
Yeah.
a whole new flair to it. So
Yeah.
Well, I like it from the perspective of I want other people knowing I'm in the air and having some sort of communal accountability for, hey, did something happen? I like that. I volunteer to be in it because I want to say to our community, I'm in the air.
Yeah.
There've been
And
a
also,
couple of
hold my beer.
Well, that too. But there have been a couple of times where people have used CreeperBot and said, hey, are you okay? And reached out to people because
Mhm.
they didn't know what was happening. And
that works pretty well unless you have
on Brian Siskin's
Brian Siskin's
ADSC.
plane where, it's now the boy that cried wolf. It just,
I've never made it anywhere.
he disappears all the time. And it's just anyway.
Yeah.
And that voice you just heard, for those in our listening audience, joining us tonight is our favorite geek. He's the one dull geek, Mark Horn. Good evening.
Hello.
Glad you're with us tonight.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, before we move
I'm-
past Mark,
Yes.
Mark, I want to ask you, how is the TJ Hooker coming along?
I am excited. I'm going in like 3 weeks. My trip is, I've got the flights booked. I've got the lodging booked. I have been on the phone almost daily with the distributor, coordinating certain things that need to happen. And it's real. It's coming. I can't wait.
It is hard for somebody of our age to say Czech Republic rather than the Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
That hasn't existed for many decades, but it's like that's what got into my brain when my brain was still wet. And yeah, so I see that. I saw you even told us correctly about where you're going, which is Czech Republic.
Correct. Not Croatia.
No, very cool. Very exciting. Real quick, anybody been doing any fun flying? I don't think I have. I do have a trip coming up. I got suckered into this deal. I don't know how, but some guy came out with this stupid course called The Long Way. And somebody said that, if I come up, I might get a free bottle of water. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to
sure
come
this
up
is-
and see.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to come up and see. Brian is presenting his course at a local flight school up there. And it's at 5:00 at Frequency Change Aviation. Is that right?
That's right.
And I also need to get some nighttime. And so I was going to hang out and then build some more night hours, cross-country hours too on the way back,
Well, what's
if
funny is-
weather supports.
I was going to say, what's funny about that is that the seminar I'm doing is at 5 p.m. at Frequency Change at John Toon Airport. For those that want to come out, it's Wednesday, which by the time this comes out, it'll be tomorrow, if it's tomorrow. Anyway, it's at 5 p.m. So Ben, when you come here and you're looking to get nighttime, you might as well just come back to my house and take a nap for 3 or 4 hours because it gets dark so late right now. But nighttime is hard to come by right now without really paying for it. But I'm glad you're coming.
Yes, very excited about it. And he also has this course. You can sign up and take this course via the Zoom or some other media.
It's an online video class, 4 weeks. So there'll be each class is a cohort of no more than 8 people. And the first one starts August 4th. And you can check it all out at makesmallcorrections.com. The first cohort is full and I've opened up a second one. So this is, it's and the simplest way to explain it is we started flying airplanes so that we could go places, but 80% of pilots stop flying within the first 2 years of having their private pilot certificate. And I feel like what I want to do is not only teach, but be able to inspire people to use their certificate. And I think that there's such a training gap between what you get for your private pilot training versus the realities and nuances of actually traveling, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast. So the course is called The Long Way because I want to inspire people to go the long way and give them tools and resources to have more adventures and do more things with their certificate because you've come this far. Why don't you make the most of it? And I think I've identified a lot of the things that are getting in the way because I've lived now all of those things and I've gathered a lot of those things in the Discord community, and everybody else has illuminated a lot of these things. So anyway, super excited, and it'll be a quick hour, Ben, don't worry, and then we'll go get some food.
Yay.
And I want to, there's got to be at least a few listeners who hear that and think Long Way Round. If you remember watching that show, Long Way Round, that was a great motorcycling show. And so that's what I hear every time is, motorcycling through Russia and across Alaska and everything else, Ewan McGregor.
I think of the Yes song, Long Distance Runaround.
There you go. Yeah.
I saw the documentary before I realized that one. I want to get to our friend Mark about his recent flying. I understand you went up with your son. You were just kind of a tag-along. Is that correct? In your airplane?
Yeah. So I was going to be coming to Brian's thing as well. That was part of the plan, except for my son is working on his commercial certificate. So there's a bunch of stuff that he needs to do. Part of the insurance for us is that he's allowed to fly the airplane as long as he has permission from the partners. The rule on permission from the partners is that I have to be in the airplane. So he has permission, he's covered by insurance as long as I'm in the airplane. Well, to be able to do some of his commercial stuff, he needs to have a CFI along with him. So there's a 2-hour day VFR, a 2-hour night VFR cross country that needs to be done. We were out trying to go do his day VFR cross country, and we inadvertently discovered that the fuel gauge on the left main tank is not functioning, and it is not functioning at 9 gallons. It's reporting 9 gallons of fuel in the tank. It's reporting it right now, but we drained that fuel tank to absolute zero, and we did this right before he was going to do a steep spiral. So I was sitting in the back, and they start initiating emergency procedures, and I'm just thinking, oh, the CFI was doing CFI tricks and pulled the throttle. No, it was a real emergency. They really lost the engine and had to restart it, and I was just back there going, I didn't know what was happening until they actually got on with ATC and said, hey, we're declaring an emergency.
Yeah. Oh. You know, needing you in the plane, also needing a CFI in the plane, and your son.
Oh, geez.
It gives me an idea.
Here it comes.
Okay, just, I don't know. Just had a thought.
Okay, Ted.
Finish the thought, Ted. You got a lot of people on the edges of their seat right now.
Shall I start calling you Lewis?
I think you can do the math on this.
Yes.
I think our audience can do the math on this one. Yes.
Very good.
Well, by the way, that's really scary. And I don't mean to just laugh that off, right? I mean, that's a real thing. So maybe Mark, start paying attention. No, I'm just kidding.
It was the least scary emergency for me.
Right.
Because I didn't think it was an emergency. I thought, oh, hey, they're doing emergency procedures.
Did you not find out till you got on the ground?
No, they had recovered the engine and made a call. The engine recovered. They went through all the procedures, switched to a different tank. Engine was recovered, and then called up ATC, declared an emergency. We want to go to the nearest airport. It was after the emergency was solved that I found out that it was an emergency.
Nice.
We should send the CFI one of our "It's Always Fuel" T-shirts.
Oh man, yeah.
I might have to do that
as a thank you, right?
Yeah, Geek. Let's get on that for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. This is why my thing to the DPE was, if it's a simulated emergency, you say so. There's no, hey, do you smell that? No, this is either real or it's not. And we're going to talk about the difference between those. So that's,
Very cool. We got a few listener feedbacks. Brian, I think the second one is more suited to you since it was actually addressed to you in our inbox. So if you don't mind, I'll take the first one.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Very cool.
It's got a few 4-syllable words in it.
Yeah. Well, I'll try my best.
All right.
It's that public school English, I guess. This comes to us from a new supporter, Mikey G. And he posted this on our Discord server. And he says, long-time listener, first-time caller. I feel like I'm among my people every time I listen to your podcast. I got my PPL while in law school back in the first decade of the millennium. Shortly I feel like you should be reading that like a Confederate soldier or something. I got my PPO while in the law school back in the. Okay, anyway. Shortly after our second child was born, I stopped flying. Work and family commitments took over, and quite honestly, they were more important. I do not regret the decision to stop flying. For the past 18 years, I've been looking to the sky every time a GA plane flies overhead, wondering if I would be able to get back into it. Well, with the son who is a sophomore in college studying aviation flight science, of all things, and a daughter who is a senior in high school, my wife surprised me by telling me she thinks I should get back into flying. She's a keeper. Don't have to tell me twice. That was January 2025. I finished up a lengthy series of CFI flights for a flight review in May 2025. Unfortunately, life hit again, mainly work-related, and I did not get to fly much and hadn't flown since August of 2025. But I just rededicated myself to it with the support of my amazing wife, and I have flown 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Now that is real progress, at least for me. And yesterday evening, I was able to take my daughter up for her first flight with me as her pilot. It was a treasure I will long remember. So all that said, I feel that I fit right in with the stories I hear on the podcast. Thank you for the community you've created, Mikey G. Sorry about that.
Man, that is fantastic. Although I do want to hear the other side of this, right? I would love to hear the daughter perspective. You know?
He just wouldn't shut up about it.
Oh, by the way, for those, just real quick, that made me think about it. Mark is staying at our house Friday night for his eventual departure to Oshkosh, and we're going to the Braves game.
Nice.
And I said, Terry, you don't mind if Mark comes with us? She goes, as long as you don't talk aviation all night, I'll be fine with it.
So to solve that, we're going to a Braves game.
That's right.
It's like, well, how can you not talk aviation all night?
Yeah, I know. Well, I said good luck with that. But anyway.
Yeah. It's like,
so Brian,
could you land between second and third base if you have a stool equipped?
Oh, yeah. There'll be those conversations, I'm sure. So,
yeah.
All right. You want to take the second one?
Yes. And thanks, Mikey G. That was awesome. That's the best stuff. So, all right. This is from Dan C. He says, Brian, I am with you in my journey. I got my private in 1997, flew a good few years, then took 16 years off. Got back with a vengeance. I'm now instrument and commercial rated and working on my CFI. I'll be 62 in September and hope to have it by then. That's amazing. I tried an accelerated course last December and it didn't go well. I am slowly getting there. I'm too old for airlines, but would love to instruct in my retirement. Hopefully I will get to the CFI portion this year. You guys are my favorite podcast and I love it. Keep up the good work and thank you. Well, I can say, Dan, that's what it's all about. I also am fascinated. I wish I could learn more about what didn't go well for the accelerated course, because so often we hear that is kind of just the thing for a lot of us where we're a little older and it's harder to fit into our schedules or our concentration is a little divided. And so, yeah.
But as Mythbuster said, failure is always an option. Hey, that it doesn't match your personality or whatever.
Yeah.
It was the wrong phase of the moon. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Figure out what works for you and do it. So good job on persisting through that.
Yeah. Like I always say, trip, fall, succeed. And he says, I'm slowly getting there. So, I mean, I just see the words getting there, you know, I take the word slowly out and it just says, I am getting there, which is great. Yeah. That's where you're going. So
I think our eyes automatically filter out those slowly or just, we focus on what we need to focus.
Creakily.
I'll also say that he said he's too old for the airlines, which almost, but not quite, but he wants to instruct in his retirement. Flying in your retirement is also an option. You can also fly for charter, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
So you have some options past 65. That's
definitely
just for the airlines.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, and honestly,
people are older than 65.
And I think the lifestyle that the airlines is made of is probably not entirely conducive to people that are around our age or a little older anyway. You know, it's sort of like being a musician on the road, you know, you got to really want that life. It's a very specific thing. So lots to do, but ultimately it's just about doing it. So, and I love the idea that it, got us private in 97, so that's got to be,
Yeah.
because I'm sure that aerodynamics have changed and physics have changed entirely since then.
Very cool. Brian, how about some belly scrubbing?
Real quick, join our Patreon community and help us keep the Midlife Pilot podcast ad-free. Your support makes this show possible, and every membership level gets you into our incredibly active Discord community for everything Midlife Pilot podcast. To support us on Patreon, send feedback, grab merch, check out event information when we have it, or non-event information. Read our blog or more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the air. Hit subscribe or follow in your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And it helps other midlifers find us. And also, I just want to say that we have been getting some great feedback and great excitement levels around our new website, midlifepilotpodcast.com. And the Midlife Pilot Podcast tape machine allows people to, in one touch, without any fuss, leave us a voice message, and you're going to start hearing more and more of these on the show. I think we've got a few queued up for tonight, and I think I'm very excited about it because we've always had that option for people, but it's just the layers and the steps and the recording and the sending. It's just, how midlife is that? It's like, well, that takes like 4 things that I have to do. So how about I just don't do it, right? So now you can go there and it's a one-touch record and then just say you're done and it automatically gets to us. And don't worry about how it sounds because we have mad science working in the background to improve the sound and make it all good. And you'll sound great even if you're, let's say, seated in a well-tiled and ceramic environment. Don't worry about the echo.
Imagine how we sound without all of Brian's processing.
Yeah.
We're dumber than it sounds like you're hearing us right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, can I really sound any dumber than I already do? I mean, let's just come on.
I feel like, Brian, you just challenged our listeners to make it sound bad.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Bring it. See what happens. But yeah, so you want to hit you want to hit the Patreon, or do you want to go ahead and play these clips, or how are we doing this? Let's play them.
I want to let me hit Patreon and Discord, and then let's go reverse order on the clips that we've got.
Okay.
So in Patreon world, I want to thank the people that have joined us, and that is Mikey G, Greg M, and Detour Dave. Great name. At the caps available level, we have Jeff. And Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Especially at the caps. Yeah, especially caps level.
Our accomplishments this week, I wrote down a couple. Hakan over in Europe wrote what he called a negative achievement. I'm using that phrase. It's not really that, but he had a partial power takeoff and had to do a lap in the pattern. He said he was climbing at 100 feet per minute, which was not enough to clear the terrain nearby. That's a wild success as far as we're concerned. That's fantastic, and I'm really glad that he shared that. He also shared that he did his first border crossing, Germany to Austria, and congrats. He must have made it back because he typed it up. I don't know if they have internet in Austria yet. So yeah, he's back home now.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
There's this section of Netherlands along Belgium where it's like the border is like very fractal. It's like every square foot like bounces back and forth between the two. And so there are lines on the sidewalk about which of the two you're in. That was a fun place to go. That you could have like 1,000 border crossings in 10 minutes just walking. That'd be, their borders are slightly different than ours. Roberto had 2 milestones. One was an hour and one was landings. It's always great to see those numbers being shared. PapaLima had a whole bunch of accomplishments. He bought a tiger, got married, ferried a plane, had his first cross country, and adopted puppies.
Let's be clear. He bought a grooming tiger. He didn't buy just a tiger out from
Is that the southern thing that it's grooming?
Grumman?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You guys can argue about the pronunciation of Grumman, but I'm more, I was reading it too. It's like he bought a tiger, and then the last thing was he adopted puppies, and I thought, is this an ecosystem? Is this?
This is like, I have a snake and I got rats. You know?
That's right.
Grumman tiger.
And he shared pictures of that, which is fantastic.
Yep.
I love it when people share pictures. ENW Echo November Whiskey had 5 rescheduling with 3 DPEs and finally got his IFR checkride scheduled and passed. And that was coming out of Erica's IFR class, which he said was 6 months ago. And so I think that class has been quite the success. There's a cohort of people we keep hearing about.
That's I can't. When I was doing my instrument check ride preparation, I was so on the edge about this check ride needs to happen. I'm peaking right now. My brain is full and I've got it all right now. Way worse than even private. I mean, because it's just such a volume of detail. And I was petrified that I would run into weather and delays and all the plane things, all the things you hear people persisting through. And for me, luckily it worked out. And I think that's how I probably passed. To hear 5 reschedulings with 3 DPEs and still passing no problem. I mean, that is to not be defeated mentally by that and also sustain yourself at the check ride ready level for that much. I think about how many emails that is. Think about how many phone calls that is. How many times that you had to have that conversation and that build up and the letdown and that is just, if you saw that graphed out, you would go, oh my gosh, So massive kudos on that. And for anybody else that's in their own struggle for any check ride where you're getting the reschedulings and all that stuff, I mean, think about, it could be worse. You could be Echo November Whiskey, and he still did it. And quick shout out also for Erica's class. I took that class, and if you go to gilbertaviation.com, you can get all the info on her IFR masterclass and a bunch of other things. But she's obviously a friend of the show, and I was telling her just the other day about how when I landed the single pilot IFR last week, I think I talked about it on the show last week, but she was one of the, after I called my CFII, I called her and wanted to thank her, because I don't take it lightly that when instructors are putting their energy into you, especially in the realm of instrument, you are really giving people what they need to stay alive. It's on a whole other level. And so after I didn't have a bad flight, I had a great flight, but it was single pilot IFR. I got a hold, things were happening. I had to make some decisions. I had to ask ATC of some things specifically and change things up and change my approach coming in and whatever. And I was fine. It was fine. And the reason why it was fine is because I had such a good foundation, and the foundation really came from her. So I shout out to her. That's all.
Yeah. Very cool. So speaking of the tape feature on our website, we've gotten a couple of submissions in. So I'm not sure which one's going to go first, but Ted, why don't we go ahead and play the first one?
So we're going to do last first. Our friend, very close friend of the show, Luke, he does a lot of our kind of AV work when we go out into the field and do our fly-ins. Luke was requested to submit a message. We have no idea what's in this. If the next thing you hear is our voices, it's because we couldn't put it into the actual podcast. So
yeah, we've heard the other ones, but not this one.
Yeah.
So we're just going to jump into this one. Here we go.
Hey there, Ben, Brian, Ted, Mark. I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for putting on this fine program. I know that it's made a massive impact on the aviation community, helping people get into aviation, continue with their training, and for people like myself, get back into it. Makes me very happy, very proud to call myself a midlifer. Now, I know what you're thinking. Luke is 29, so how exactly does that work? And to that, I would say I've also flown in GA and filled the plane up with 100 low lead. And you guys have seen me drink the FBO coffee a time or two. The average life expectancy is still 75. So, A question I will leave you guys with is, given your more experienced tenure, wink, wink, is there any advice that you would give someone in their early 20s or late teens that is different than what you would give yourself now? as far as aviation goes. Also, I'll see you in Oshkosh, Ben. I'll bring you something. Oshkosh, baby.
He's going to be riding in the same airplane with me, and he's not going to see me in Oshkosh? I'm confused.
He's just going to be seeing the back of your head, I guess.
Yes.
Well, thanks for that, Luke. Do you guys have a quick answer for his question? Anybody?
What advice? My advice would be this. I've noticed this with my own children that are in their early 20s, not necessarily as it relates to aviation, but I feel like whatever they're working on is task oriented. They don't stop and smell the roses. And so if you're learning to fly in your early 20s, enjoy the process. It might seem like work, but what you're getting to do is a privilege. So that's my
There you go. Well said.
I have two things. The first is get off my lawn. The second is I admire the youth. My partner is a school teacher, middle school teacher, and I admire the youth because it seems like their brains are where I was 15 years past them. And how great is that they're so smart, they're so early on in their intelligence, the things they've learned, all that. It's fantastic. And so yeah, enjoy it. And you're right, Ben, I agree with that, which is step back a little bit.
Awesome.
Very good.
Next, let's hit the other one. I don't know what happened to our screen, but we'll just carry on.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but yeah.
I didn't touch anything. It was Mark.
Probably.
All right.
Mark, were you messing with it?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. You just had this look like, yeah, it was me.
Oops.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Midlife Pilot Podcast. This is Sierra Squared. When you said there was a new tape recorder with a VU meter and you want people to test it out, well, as a flight test engineer, I couldn't resist. You also mentioned this during your go, no-go criteria discussion. And I want to talk a little bit how we use that in flight test. Each test plan we write has a preset list of go, no-go criteria that's written in the test plan and approved, so we can't just go change it day of. And we go through that in the pre-flight brief before we go to the aircraft every single day. And they're pretty standard things you might imagine: weather, aircraft status, comms, so on, crew rest, crew day especially. I've taken that experience and turned my go-no criteria for my flight into what I call my pre-flight checklist, because I am an engineer and I'm terrible at naming things. So here's just a smattering of what it's like and maybe a thought process for people to go through even if they don't come up with their own. So I've got it broken into 1 to 2 days or a couple hours prior to flight. Things like current medical and flight review up to date, go. Landing currency or night currency, go. Aircraft available, current inspections completed, go. Review of all current squawks, hours until the next inspections, go. Review of weather, TFR and NOTAMs, go. Weight and balance, runway distance, pre-flight briefing from flight, all those, go. I've got a separate one if I'm going cross country, and then I've got a subset that I do just prior to kind of going to the aircraft. Might be to update weather, do another I'm safe checklist, and then make sure you've got everything in your bag. Now, some of these, if you don't have them, you can fix them. Other ones, it's a simple decision, pre-made, that you're not going, and you have to hold yourself to that. And I think that's how it's best used. Thank you.
That's great. That's
That was
great.
good. That self-accountability.
Yeah, they're only as good as you holding yourself to them, and you don't have a CFI over your shoulder all the time. I mean, feel free to use a CFI to maintain your minimums, but I love that the engineer with the pre-flight.
Very cool. Did we have one more, or was that it?
We do. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have many Brians and many Chris's. This is Chris M.
Awesome.
Hello, Midlife Pilot Podcast team. Just trying out the new meter on your recording on the website. I fit the definition of your midlife pilot. I learned to fly when I was in college in my 20s and left it for 15 years and started up again 10 years ago. Since then, I've followed the trajectory that much of you are talking about. I got commercial, seaplane, CFI, CFII, multi-engine, all the ratings just to build my skills. Everything is much harder than you would think trying to do this in your 40s and 50s. So thanks all for the podcast, and I reassure that I'll keep listening.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. And that's a lot of ratings.
That is a lot of ratings.
Well done.
Very impressive. Very cool. So tonight we want to get into our main topic, and one of the people that inspired this topic is actually in our chat. I don't think he knows that we're going to be talking about this, but shout out to Rich, very active in our Discord channel. There was a conversation that started in there that really kind of highlighted why we felt like this would make a great topic. And that's the misconceptions or misperceptions of a sport pilot. And it started off with a conversation that Rich had. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase what he said. We pulled the transcripts, but I kind of want to get to Rich is having a conversation with another member of the community. And the problem is that flying clubs do not want to allow sport pilots to fly their plane, even after MOSAIC and the Cessna 172 is considered legal to fly as a sport pilot.
This is not empirical, but this is, yeah.
This is not empirical, but this is kind of what we're seeing a lot of. So I'm going to just kind of jump in. He said, the previous person had said that the sport pilot it's a lesser certificate. And he mostly argued that pilots anyway do more than minimum hours, yada, yada. So Rich points out, he said, a lesser certificate, I disagree. The skills that I had to perform for a checkride had to be at the same level of proficiency as a private pilot, but in a plane that is harder to fly, so much lighter. Is it less capable? No. Is it more limited? Yeah. It's a matter of limitations, not a matter of skill or proficiency. No, I don't have any night flight and don't have to do 3 hours under the hood. But for the record, I do have to do under the hood prior to cross-country solo per 61.93E12. And I don't have to know how to use VORs. How many people still use those? Other than that, the skills are the same. And so that, we felt like it would be fair to bring up and discuss amongst the four of us. Ted is our sport pilot extraordinaire. And I would also like it pointed for the record that Ted has more miles flown probably in his CTLS than I have in the 9 years I've been flying my 182. So it's, say what you will, but that's kind of the premise of what we wanted to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I think maybe a good way to put that is distance from home that I have versus some other pilots. And, whatever, who cares, right? Like that's very anecdotal. The other thing is I do want to defend people who are like, oh, it's not a lesser certificate. Yeah, there's enough people who say it is. This is a common belief. That's what we're covering. It's generally seen as kind of your starter rating, that type of thing. And that's why we're talking about it. It's not whether it's true or not. It's just that's kind of the perception of it.
100%.
So, yeah. And, I think it comes from a couple different things. Certainly, at first glance, you see that sport pilots need 20 hours to get their license, and private pilots need 40. You're like, okay, well, they're half the pilot that a private pilot is. Like, yeah, you're kind of missing the point there, but sure, let's go with that. As we all know, 40 hours means nothing for when you actually get your license. That number doesn't even need to exist as far as all of us are concerned. Nobody was sitting at 39 and a half and was like, I better go out and do a couple laps in the pattern so that I'm legal to take my check ride. It's not a practical number. So whether that number is 1 hour or 100 hours, okay, 100 it wouldn't matter for most of us. That number is lower than we all find the reality is. But the other thing is that the sport pilot rating starts with more limitations, and then you add those things on. I always call them merit badges. That's what I get for being an Eagle Scout. Instead of starting with, hey, you can fly at night, you can fly anywhere you want, you can do all of this stuff, it starts out much more restricted with the idea that most pilots don't need that. I can think of very accomplished pilots who are very nervous flying in controlled airspace. So the fact that they can't fly, or they wouldn't be able to fly as a sport pilot into, let's say, a Delta airspace without getting an additional endorsement wouldn't be a big deal. There's no reason to spend that extra time on that when you can start with that basic rating. So those to me are some of the initial kind of takes on the difference of that. So yeah, you start with, think about it as like 20 hours and then add on your additional ratings.
It's funny too, because it's not as if you go about getting your private pilot certificate and you just get to skip going to a Delta with an instructor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you I suppose I don't know, but it's, you know what I'm saying? Like these endorsements are happening in one way or another anyway. And then the endorsements that instructors are giving for the solo endorsements have to be very explicit about all of this kind of thing. So, I mean, essentially it's kind of apples to apples, really. I mean, you know what I mean? It's sort of a farce. But one thing I was just thinking too is, God, what are the ways that you actually are better because you're a sport pilot? The absolute antithesis to this bizarre sentiment that you find that sport pilots are lesser pilots. I mean, I always think in the context of weight and balance. So you have a far less margin of error to be playing around with in generally a light sport, aircraft. Now I understand these things are changing right now, but I'm just saying it. And this mythology has been building for a while. MOSAIC is obviously changing all these things, but still, I mean, I can see what he's saying about, I flew a far twitchier, harder to get down airplane probably than, flying a 172 is almost so much more stable and easygoing comparatively, I would imagine. So there's that. But where do you think, from just a kind of emotional intelligence point of view or a sociological point of view, or just from that perspective, I mean, is there just always some need for people to punch down for some reason, or like what is behind this idea that because everybody can feel that, right? Like this mythology that people perpetuate that sport pilot is lesser, and they talk about it more like that. So what do you think's behind that?
I think, well, first of all, it's not the standard path. Whenever you're doing something that isn't the path that 80% of people take, it's not going to be as well understood. And I think that that's one of the things, at least for me, that I had to do as a sport pilot was advocate for being a sport pilot. I had to not only understand what was required for my PTS, it's not ACS, but for my PTS and the checkride, I needed to know front and back the ACS for the private pilot, because I knew the DPE does 1 million of those, and she literally had done none in the given year of the sport pilot. I broke the spine of my private pilot ACS because I went through it so many times, comparing the differences. So there's things like that where it's like, if you go the default route, everybody else has done that too. It's pretty easy just to stay in the middle of the stream and float along. But when you're in this case, you end up having to advocate for yourself a lot more, and for the idea of a sport pilot, not just yourself, but stand up for it. So that's definitely one thing that I've noticed.
How much do you think that recreational pilot, which there's like a handful of them, and is really like nobody, how much does that play into the misperception of sport pilot?
For sure. Okay, now this is from memory. It's been years since I've thought about this, but it's like last I knew there were like 83 active recreational sport pilots. And I think the number may be in the 60s now. Like it shouldn't even exist, right?
If you know one, we need one on the show.
We have spent more time talking about it just now than
Yeah.
like relatively it deserves for the entire podcast. But even in the MOSAIC documents, they considered it a continuum between sport, recreational, and private. And it's like, no, just stop considering this to be a thing. Like it doesn't actually exist. But yes, there were the assumption was, oh, you only want to fly within 25 or 50 miles of home. And that's going to be enough for you as a recreational pilot. So it was another attempt at it. It didn't take off. As I've been in a lot of startups, and that's kind of what you do, right? It's like, what sticks on the wall? Let's just try things that didn't. But now the problem is everybody's like, we're recreational. It's like, yeah, no, just it doesn't exist.
Right. So one of the things that I find curious, especially when you talk about the hours and the proficiency, is that I was talking with the recruiter who sent 2 people that were CFIs that had 1,500 hours for a airline job, and they both didn't make it past the first screening because they put them in a simulator and they barely knew how to fly an airplane because they spent the majority of their career in the right seat and barely touched the controls. My point in mentioning that is that it's the quality of the hours. What the number doesn't mean to me hardly anything. That you could be a 75-hour pilot and be 10 times more safer than that 1,000-hour pilot. So, and again, you're handling lighter airplanes and crosswinds. I would say that you're probably more skilled and adept and proficient than a lot of the pilots flying heavier aircraft. The other part of it that I wanted you to speak on, Ted, is the flying clubs and the insurance excuse.
Man.
Yeah. So Rich has said on the Discord server that every flying club in Atlanta says no to sport pilots. And the one exception requires a medical or basic med, which completely defeats the point. So they always try to pull out this excuse for insurance. And I mean, is that a thing?
Do you remember you and I did a kind of a spec podcast for this podcast before we were hosts or anything else? We wanted to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And it was, hey, Ben, you have 1,000 hours in one plane. Hey, Ted, you've got 200 hours, 150 hours, something like that in 15 planes.
Yep.
What are the relative benefits between those things? And kind of argue the advantage on both sides of that. Now it's funny because we're both in the same camp. I have so many hours in my own plane and have barely been in anything else for a few years. I did fly the 150 and 172, but yeah. The reason I did that to catch people up is after I got my ticket, I had to buy a plane. And I say had to because as a sport pilot, especially pre-MOSAIC, I couldn't just join a club, right? No club had an LSA that I could be a part of. I tried to go in on a partnership on a Sun X. I worked on it for a summer and it just wasn't going to happen. I ended up at the point where I was like, okay, I'm just going to buy a plane. So I went literally around the country and flew various LSAs that were at schools so that I could decide what I liked. That's why I have experience of flying in the DC area. And oh man, I had like 120 hours or something when I was flying into that airspace. Yeah. I flew in Phoenix a bunch. I flew separately in Southern Arizona. I flew the Skycatcher in Nashville. I went around and tried a bunch of planes. And those were all at schools that happened to have LSAs as part of their fleet. My point behind this is, again, this is all pre-MOSAIC. It's easier now, but pre-MOSAIC, all of these places, when you ask them what their insurance policy was, about half of them would say, our insurance says you have to have a medical. Sorry, you can't fly with us. And I'd say, show me the policy. And they'd go look up their policy and it would say, if your certificate requires a medical policy, you have to have a medical. It doesn't say a medical is required, which is hilarious, but nobody reads it. And again, this comes back to being an advocate for your own flying, and especially as a sport pilot, but this is true for all of us. Don't just rely on what anyone else says. And those were the situations where even my home airport, it was like, citation needed, show me the policy here. And sure enough, they're all worded the same way. And I have yet to, please write in, please send us your policy. I have yet to see a policy that truly excludes sport pilots. It implies that it does by that whole medical is required with an asterisk type comment. So,
well, I like how
yeah.
the aerodynamics change based on whether or not you have a medical. That, I mean, obviously that's true.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously I'm a lesser pilot because I'm flying under different aerodynamics than you.
Exactly.
Gravity doesn't work the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah, sport pilot airplanes are not all flat spotted tires, and but so what in terms of getting past all of these things, what would you say to someone? Actually, let me back up a little bit. People should remember that we, as commercial pilots, private pilots, we can all fly any. I can be a sport pilot tomorrow if I want. Those are privileges that you can choose to operate under. And there may be, in certain cases, mission-specific reasons or circumstances to do that or might be beyond your purview right now. So before you start knocking sport pilots, you might want to have that as a tool in your back pocket that you can operate under that set of privileges. So what say you, Ted?
Think about, you may have your first class med, but you're not actually using it. You're using your third class. You may be using your basic med. This is the same thing. You are not using the privileges that a first class medical brings to you. You may be in a situation where now there's 7,000, this number's going wrong, but there's 7,000 sport pilots. What that means is there's 7,000 active pilots that their license says sport pilot. That is different than the number of pilots who are acting as a sport pilot.
Yeah.
Any one of us can go and fly and declare you're flying as a sport pilot, meaning you don't need a medical to fly this. You only have one passenger. You're flying a plane that qualifies under MOSAIC rules. You don't need a medical to fly that as a private pilot. This is not you writing into the FAA and saying, please downgrade my private to sport.
Right.
This is just you declaring for this flight,
Yeah.
I am a sport pilot.
Now, just a little disclaimer in there.
Please. Yeah.
Call your local representative. Talk to the FSDO. Talk to Erica. I don't know. Talk to somebody.
AOPA. Yeah.
AOPA. Yeah.
AOPA. Anything that honestly any business that has an acronym in it of any kind is probably going to have a better, more legal representational. It could be AA plumbers. I don't know, but
Yes.
call somebody else. Don't rely
Still
on
better
us for
advice.
these things.
Yeah.
Just massive disclaimer there. And the other thing I want to say is that I am pretty well certain about this, that if you have been denied a medical, that is not then the point where you can say, oh, well, then I guess I'm going to do this now.
Yes. It is very clearly written. If you're denied or even deferred, you can, as your most recent medical, not in the past, as your most recent medical, you cannot fly as a sport pilot. That has been, I've heard through fairly official channels, that has been a mistake they made initially. They did not intend for that to happen, where you apply to a medical, you get denied, you cannot fly sport. That was a mistake. We've been stuck with it for 20 years. It's probably going to be that case for another 100 years. So whatever, we're past that. But that is, to be clear, there are restrictions here. And Brian is not saying that I'm dumb. He's saying we're all dumb. And we're not the people to listen to for any authoritative advice on this. But yeah, there are so many misperceptions about sport pilots. We all know that experience of trying to explain what your limitations are to someone who's not a pilot, and they don't understand why flying into the clouds is such a big deal, or that a commercial pilot doesn't mean you're actually flying for an airline immediately on getting it. Same sort of thing exists for sport. There's so many pilots who may remember a few of the limitations and translate that to being everybody. So, I thought as a sport pilot you couldn't fly above 2,000 feet. Oh, that's not true.
I thought as a sport pilot, you only could fly on Tuesdays if the date was an odd number. So
Yeah.
you and I need to talk about that a little further.
I thought you just had to wear New Balance.
Now, to be clear, there are so many restrictions that you're not aware of. One of the restrictions is you're not allowed to do things that are incidental to business as a sport pilot. That's a privilege you get as a sport pilot, as a private pilot. You can fly somewhere and happen to do business while you're there. You cannot do that as a sport pilot. There are quirks like that, and those are things you need to be aware of, and you need to listen to somebody better than me on those. But there are definitely limitations that exist that are valid.
One other thing I want to add, and thank you for all your insights on this, Ted. We are the Midlife Pilot Podcast. The next season of the Midlife Pilot Podcast will be the Elderly Life Podcast.
Yes.
And
oh man.
For anyone out there that thinks that sport pilot is lesser, rethink that if you really love flying, because you are going to need possibly to be aiming in that direction. So you might as well go ahead and get familiar and figure out how to gracefully self-regulate, do whatever it is that you need to do to guide yourself to the descent, if you want to call it that, to the sport pilot privilege set. We're not getting younger.
I think it was Andrew, who said in Discord, who was talking about the argument that really made his club understand sport pilot. You can argue all these things, it doesn't matter. But the whole point was that any one of us is a future sport pilot. That is the way to think about it. This isn't, should we allow a sport pilot into our flying club? It's any one of us at any day are going to be exercising sport pilot privileges. Does that make you a less qualified pilot? Does this change the training that you've had, the hours that you have when you suddenly decide you're going to change?
Are you going to fly that 172 different yesterday than you are today because now that you're a sport pilot?
Yeah.
Basically. I want to wrap it up with how things shook out with Rich. He did find a flight school that wanted him. They rent Skyhawks, and now that he's got an avenue, the CIVs there go to him with their questions. They have students that are buying Technums and other light sports, and they don't know what to teach. And our friend Rich, the sport pilot, is the resource for those guys. And that says a lot to me. That it's, so, just like you say, Ted, there's quirks in there that I think our listeners need to be mindful of. There's a few Bravos that you can't fly into, but there are some Bravos that you can fly into. There are restrictions out there that you have to watch out for.
Yeah, that Bravo one is one that you really have to dig deep to figure out. It's like in this Appendix D of the FARs to understand that it's like you have to have a private or above to fly into these 12 of 37 airports. Why? Who knows? But the reason that this came up recently, because we were talking about flying into Dulles for the museum stuff. And it was, can sport pilots fly over into there? And the answer is yes, you can fly into Dulles. You can't fly into DCA, into Reagan. So,
but you've been in the CIFRA.
I've been in the CIFRA. Yeah. Go figure.
Yeah.
So again, call AOPA before you approach getting your medical done. There are things that you need to know, and a denial can cost you your sport eligibility. I think that's a big takeaway.
Ted, I'm hoping that you will go a little bit deeper into the discussion of the accident of applying for a medical and being deferred. I don't mean here, but I mean in Discord, and that we can follow that up in Discord because I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Let's hit that up in Discord.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you. I want to remind everybody, leave us a review. A 5-star review would be fantastic. You go to the Fruit Player podcast and you can leave it there. Follow us, subscribe, do all the stuff. Anything else, gentlemen, for the good of the order? Okay.
Thanks, Ted.
Yeah, Ted. Well done tonight. You are the go-to. I don't normally do this. I'm trying not to repeat my Woody things, but it applies to this topic so much. I just said this probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago, but I freaking love it. It says, no matter how modest an airplane that lifts you into the sky is a real airplane. It doesn't get any more real than that. There are only differences in degrees. Signing off, episode 189 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.